There is one TikTok and one TikTok only that inspired me to make this whole video, and it's this one.
And I feel like when people try to like trudge through things that they don't like and are not enjoying, because I just have to see it through, like, why are you adding hustle culture to your hobbies? Because that's really you hustling a book.
Because why are you adding hustle culture to your hobbies? We'll discuss how constant comparison on social media makes us turn our hobbies into just another determinant of how productive we are. We'll talk about hobbymaxxing and frictionmaxxing because yes, apparently those words exist now. We'll also take a look at two debates from Booktok that I think very well illustrates the problems with hobbies nowadays, and those debates are: is it possible to read 100 books a year? And does listening to audiobooks count as reading? And obviously we'll have to talk about why does it even matter.
When people ask me how do I read so many books, it's because I don't finish half of them. If I feel bored, if I don't like the plot, if the wind blows in a way I do not like, I just don't finish the book. Oh, I gotta see it through. No, you don't. You really don't. You could go to the last page, read the conclusion, and be like, that's enough. You could just open the book halfway and just look at it and be like, yeah, that's enough.
Seeing this video was such a breath of fresh air for me in terms of like the discourse about hobbies on TikTok, because what I'm used to seeing is people keeping a tally of how many books they read, how many times a week they draw or color, how many things they bought to start a new hobby. And this lady is treating hobbies the way I think they are supposed to be treated, which is something you do to spend time in a nice, relaxing and interesting way. I myself didn't even realize how much like the hustle culture and the productivity mindset influence the way I approach my own hobbies until she made me realize. Because of course I don't have to finish a book I don't like. No one is keeping track of what I'm doing with my free time. But I think why I thought that in the first place can be at least partly explained by the concept of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is when you are doing something just because you enjoy the process, the action of doing that thing. And extrinsic motivation is when you are doing something because you want an external award or because someone is watching you. Research on this concept suggests that when you are doing something that you intrinsically enjoy, this is a very hard word for me by the way, when you take something that you intrinsically enjoy and you apply external metrics to it, you can actually undermine the feeling of enjoyment you get from it. And social media is basically a machine that turns intrinsic motivation into extrinsic motivation. Maybe not in every case, but sometimes when you post about your hobby, whether that's a reading wrap up or like a progress update or whatever, your hobby can stop being only yours and it may become just a performance. The same happens when you set goals that are too rigid. You're no longer doing your hobbies just for the enjoyment of it, but because there's a goal to be met. It may not feel like this, but with time, when you're picking a book, there's a voice in your head telling you this will count toward my goal. The hobby stops being a refuge and becomes just another domain where you can succeed or fail. So I decided I don't have to do my hobbies every single day just to take them off my to-do list. I also don't have to push myself to do things the hardest way possible, which is what is emerging on TikTok right now. We'll start from hobbymaxxing because this phenomenon fits very nicely into like the general aura of overconsumption on TikTok. Hobbymaxxing, as the name suggests, is doing as many hobbies as possible.
Hobbymaxxing is just the way to really enjoy life if you are not doing things on the weekends, after work, on your trips that really just like fill your cup and make you expand your mind, try new things, meet new people. Like, you're just not living life to the fullest. I'm sorry.
The idea is nice, right? I mean, it seems like a rejection of doom scrolling and dedicating your life only to your work. Because there are so many people who, go to their job, they come back home, they do their chores, then maybe they'll watch some Netflix or scroll for a little bit and then they just go to sleep. Hobbymaxxing is supposed to be opposite of that. It's a way of living life that is filled with interesting things like creative hobbies, reading, doing sports, going out, trying new things. It's supposed to make your life interesting so you don't burn out and lose your spark. But it seems to pivot into mindless overconsumption of hobbies this time, because TikTok tends to promote buying too much makeup, clothes, too many labubos, and now it seems to be promoting doing too many hobbies. Now, I don't think there's a set amount of hobbies that is optimal for everybody, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you can only do one or two because three is too much or whatever. That's not what I mean. We all have, different energy levels. Each of us has a different amount of free time. Also, different hobbies require a different amount of time engagement. So I think this is a very, very individual question. However, it is such a TikTok thing to do to encourage people to do as many hobbies as possible, as if we forgot that we can overdo it as well and burn out from the thing that was supposed to prevent burnout. Especially when we throw Frictionmaxxing to the mix.
The research shows Frictionmaxxing is good for your brain. When you choose harder ways of doing things, you're building mental strength and patience.
Frictionmaxxing is a term coined by Catherine Jesser Morton. In her article, she argues that tech companies are trying to convince us that life is inconvenient and modern technology is the answer to that. It's turning us into creatures dependent on things like social media and Uber Eats, and in order to fight this, we should reintroduce and learn how to live with life's inconveniences, at least some of them. How I understand Frictionmaxxing in terms of hobbies is choosing more difficult hobbies or trying to make them harder on purpose so that we can feel like we've accomplished something or that we've spent our time in a productive way.
First, write physical letters to your friends or practice your handwriting and calligraphy. This activates more brain regions than typing and it forces your brain to slow down. Second is to try to solve a math problem without a calculator. This strengthens your working memory and your problem solving skills.
As much as hobbies can be a form of self-improvement and as much as difficult things have plenty of benefits to them, let's not forget that our hobbies aren't supposed to feel like just another thing we have to do. Like it's just another task that our manager assigned to us. They are supposed to be things that we are doing out of passion and love. They aren't supposed to make us feel like we are spending every single second of every single day being productive, but like we are spending the time when we don't have to hustle doing the things we love, because no one is keeping track and no one is keeping us accountable. Which brings me to my next point, the 100 books a year debate. The TikTok that started it all was this one.
And for my most controversial take on this app, let me just say, if you are an unemployed person, please do not give any of us on this app your take on, I read 100 books a year. It's possible. Baby, we know it's possible for you. You don't have a job. You don't clock in. Now, that being said, can an unemployed person and an employed person read 100 books? Yes. I'm not saying if you read 100 books, you're unemployed. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you know that you're unemployed and you read 100 books, maybe don't come on here telling other people, well, maybe if you just put down your phone, like you could read 100 books too. You could just do it by getting off your phone and spending less screen time.
This video sparked a huge debate on Booktok. Some people were agreeing with her. Other people were saying it's completely possible. But I was asking myself, why does that matter? Who is keeping track? And why?
They're both impressive, by the way, before you come at me. It's impressive to read 100 books at your job or not. I'm just saying,
Now, I kind of understand keeping track of how many books you read in a year, just in general. This is something I'm doing just to, motivate myself to read more. I love reading way more than I watching TV, for example. But for some reason, I just have this tendency to turn on the TV when I have some time off instead of grabbing a book. And last year, I really didn't read that much, and I realized that I could have, I had the free time to do it, but instead of reading, I was watching TV. I don't really know why, I cannot explain this. Maybe it was out of convenience, maybe, I was too tired to read, but because right now I'm kind of keeping track of how many books I'm reading, this encourages me to read more. What I don't understand, however, is feeling the need to compare how many books you read with other people. I mean, you are not at work. The top performer does not get a pay raise. But I think it comes down to the elitism of reading, because for some reason reading is seen as a better hobby than, for example, watching movies. It's something more intellectually stimulating with absolutely no regard for how challenging the book or the movie are. I would argue that watching a serious essay film is more demanding than a beach read, but this is not how we talk about this, because for a very long time books were a marker of education, status, literacy, literacy was a privilege. And even though it's not really like this anymore, I mean, the current literacy crisis might suggest otherwise, but nonetheless, the cultural association of books with like education and privilege and status stuck. I read 100 books this year isn't necessarily a statement about how much you enjoy reading. It's more like saying, hey, this is how I spend my time. Look how smart I am, which isn't necessarily a wrong thing. I mean, hobbies are a part of our identity, but let's not pretend like there is some objective hierarchy where books sit at the top and reality TV sits at the bottom, and everything else is somewhere in between depending on how challenging it is. But movies and TV shows are not the only things that are seen as inferior to reading. Under videos in which people talk about, for example, the fact that they read 100 books last year, you can find comments like this one which says, audiobooks don't count. There was a whole debate about how reading is more difficult than listening, that it requires more focus. There were also people saying that they are just different verbs, so it doesn't count as the same action. Like, there was a lot of talk about this, but it all boiled down to the fact that audiobooks don't count as books read, more as books consumed. But this comment, audiobooks don't count, it made me think of comments that I saw under the first video that I showed you today of the lady talking about, why are you adding hustle culture to your hobbies? Under that video, there was a comment saying, wait, so not finishing the book counts? Counts for what? Who is holding you responsible? Who is keeping track? Only you. If you decide it counts, then it counts. There is some weird tendency to put very rigid boundaries on your hobbies. A book only counts as read if you held it physically in your hand and read it from the first to the last page. Then you can tick it off your TBR list. But isn't the idea behind hobbies that it's for us and us only? That we don't have to compete with other people like we do at work? That we don't have to push ourselves to sit through the difficult and boring parts, and instead we can do it in a way that's interesting? That's not to say that pushing through and reading a book that we find boring, difficult, or intellectually stimulating doesn't have benefits, because of course it does, but we don't have to do that if we don't feel like it serves a purpose in our lives. Hobbies used to be a part of life that existed outside of productivity and performance. Those were things that we did when no one was looking, just because they made time feel nice. And I'm working to have this back again, to have these feelings that my hobbies are for me only, and honestly, I would encourage you to do the same. The books you read in a year are not a measure of your intelligence, discipline, or your worth. Your hobbies are not your brand. They are here so you don't lose your mind in this very hectic and productivity focused world. They are here to serve you and you only. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments, and feel free to share your hobbies and how they are helping you navigate this world. If you don't know what to watch next, I would highly recommend this video. Obviously, don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye!